concluded with this passage where Savitri says to Satyavan, "My heart will stay here on this forest verge and close to this thatched roof while I am far. Now of more wandering it has no need, but I must haste back to my father's house, which soon will lose one loved, accustomed tread, and listen in vain for a once cherished voice. For soon I shall return, nor ever again oneness must sever its recovered bliss, or fate sunder our lives where life is ours." Accordingly, she goes to her father's place, and we are now in Book 6, which has 2 cantos. First one is called the Word of Fate, and this is where we have the most dramatic movement in the entire story. Now, it begins by describing Narad's visit to this earth, and that in itself is a very beautiful description, how Narad comes from the highest heights, and as he approaches the earth, how the themes that he sings of undergo changes. Then finally, because since if we pause at every thing that you have here, we may not get very far. We have already done about 9 talks. This is the 10th, and we have 6 more, and it's a daunting task to review the remaining, probably the most fascinating part of this in the next 5-6 talks. But I always feel that Sri Aurobindo had 50 years to write this. We are always in a hurry, but we have to do what best we can. So as Narad comes down, a change now fell upon the singer's mood. When he is in the higher levels, he talks of Vishnu and his love and his perfection and so on. But as he approaches the earth, on page 416, he says, "A change now fell upon the singer's mood. A rapture and a pathos moved his voice." Suddenly, the entire voice and the whole thing changed. He sang no more of light that never wanes, and oneness and pure everlasting bliss. He sang no more the deathless heart of love. His chant was a hymn of ignorance and fate. So as he was coming closer to the earth, he was singing now a hymn of ignorance and fate. He sang the name of Vishnu and the birth and joy and passion of the mystic world, and how the stars were made and life began, and the mute region stirred with the throb of a soul. He sang the inconscient and its secret self, its power omnipotent, knowing not what it does, all shaping without will or thought or sense, its blind, unerring, occult mystery, and darkness yearning towards the eternal light, and love that broods within the dim abyss, and waits the answer of the human heart, and death that climbs to immortality. So this is the world where our only approach to immortality happens to be through death. And then, not only does he talk about the inconscient that has held this earth in its grip, as it were, he also thinks of the glory yet to be born. A few lines later, he sang of the glory and marvel still to be born, of Godhead throwing off at last its veil, of bodies made divine and life made bliss, immortal sweetness clasping immortal might, heart sensing heart, thought looking straight at thought, and the delight when every barrier falls, and the transfiguration and the ecstasy. And then he says, and as he sang, the demons wept with joy, foreseeing the end of their long dreadful task, and the defeat for which they hoped in vain, and glad release from their self-chosen doom, and return into the one from whom they came. This is a favorite theme in many of the Indian Puranas. The demons are waiting. Demons are asuric forces, are supposed to be, providing impediments to God's growth here on this earth. But it's not because they like to do it, because they have been appointed to do that work. Later on you will see even the god of death, when his task is finished, you will find his real form is not the god of death, his real form is the god of love. But in the conditions of ignorance, he appears to us as the god of death. So everything here, even the so-called asuric forces, ultimately, if this god belongs to the one Lord, the Supreme Lord, how can there be asuric forces? How can there be anti-divine forces? If they are not in the long run serving a purpose of the divine himself. So the divine makes use of these various powers. They look to us as adversaries, but they are not, as he says, they are not very happy performing that task. They want to be released. So ultimately, it is the divine's world, it is the world of this Lord. It's not the world in which God and some anti-God are fighting, struggling, as many other philosophies make it out to be. But in the Indian spiritual tradition, unmistakably this world belongs to God, and therefore everything that happens in this world, God is ultimately responsible. The Hindu God, as I said the other day, has the most difficult task, because he can't disown anything that happens in the world, because there is nothing else that exists here except the Supreme Brahman. If that is it, then all these asuras and so on are here because they are performing a task. Basically what they are doing is, they are making sure that you do not get admission to the higher level until you are really able and competent. It's like a strict examiner. You don't expect an examiner to be, lenient and, gloss over your mistakes and inadequacies. That's the job. The god of death is also the god of immortality in one sense. Nachiketa goes to the Yama to learn the secret of immortality. So he has to be convinced that you are deserved to go beyond death. Only then he grants you immortality. Until then, he shows us the terrible face of the god of death. But they all are basically appointed by the divine for a certain task. This is a world which is growing from ignorance to the superconscience, and at each level there are tests, and these tests have to be passed. Not 33%, it doesn't mean you know only 33% of your content. You have to know 100%, only then you get beyond it. The Hindu concept about these things is very, very complex and complicated, and the outsiders very often are amazed, how we deal with our gods. There is this story in the Puranas, Durvasa and company, were going for the darshan of Vishnu, and suddenly the Dwarpalaks, because they got insolent or got careless or whatever, didn't show to Durvasa the respect that he expects everybody to show to him, and they misbehaved with him, and Durvasa, of course, doesn't take much time to get very angry and in curse. And he cursed them, and that they will lose their job and they will be demoted to the earth. Then, of course, he becomes penitent, and he feels, that the punishment that the curse will mean to them is much more severe compared to their offense, which was they didn't pay proper attention to this great man coming. So in all shapas in Indian Purana, there is called Ushapa. There is another a kind of another kind of it mitigates to some extent. It reduces the severity of the first one. And he says, all right, what has happened has happened. It has to come true. You have two choices. Either you are born on the earth 14 times as God's devotees. So you have to come 14 times. Or you come to this earth as God's enemies, but only for 3 lives. Which one will you choose? And naturally he chooses, if it is only 3 lives, we would rather come to this earth like God's enemies rather than be separated from him for 14 lives, and all the Ravana and Kamsa and all these supposed to be these Dwarapalakas of Vishnu. So notice evil, even the way that we deal with evil, is not, it's not, it's not the Western way. That's why when the Life Divine was written, and not written, when the Life Divine was published by the first time by the American publisher, Times Literary Supplement reviewed it extensively, and it was a very glorious review. He said, this is undoubtedly one of the greatest books produced in the 20th century. This is the Times Literary Supplement reviewer saying it, by saying all good things about it, but he says Sri Aurobindo, like all the Hindus, doesn't take evil seriously. This is either because he was prejudiced or he was reading the book over the weekend, so he had to finish it. And Life Divine is not a book that lends itself to be finished over the weekend. It takes careful reading, because if you have really read the book, there are chapters and chapters on evil. How did evil come about, and what is the way out of evil? So Sri Aurobindo takes evil very seriously. I have more to say about this. But this is the general feeling. We are not terrorized by the presence of evil. We think if there is evil, it is a seeming evil. For our present consciousness, it looks like evil. Because if the world is under the control of the all-merciful, all-good, divine, then how can there be things of this kind? They only look like that. Ultimately, they prepare for a greater good that is to come. No need. So, this is the whole idea, and there are many such things. So as I read that again, as he sang, the demons wept with joy, foreseeing the end of their long, dreadful task, and the defeat for which they hoped in vain. They were hoping that they would be defeated. But he says man is taking his own time, hoping for a defeat. They wanted to be defeated on this earth, but so far it has proved in vain. And the defeat for which they hoped in vain, and the glad release. They would be very happy to be released from their asuric nature, asuric duties, from their self-chosen doom, and return into the one from whom they came. So the asuras also have come from the same supreme from which you and I have ultimately come. So this is very briefly to give you an idea. Even in a casual thing like Narad's coming down, this is described over 1.5 pages. It is packed with so much that you can't miss things like that and go hurriedly over Savitri. But at the same time, as you can see, it is not like the first 3 books, very difficult for us to negotiate. It's kind of talks about experiences that are familiar to us. As Narad comes down, he says, King Ashwapathi's palace, where rose King Ashwapathi's palace to the winds, in Madra, flowering up in delicate stone, there welcomed him the sage and thoughtful king. At his side a creature beautiful, passionate, wise, aspiring like a sacrificial flame, skyward from its earth seed through luminous air, queen-browed, the human mother of Savitri. So, when Narad reaches Ashwapathi's court, Ashwapathi's palace, he finds him sitting in his court, and by his side you find Savitri's mother. And of course, all this is beautiful. Then we go on to the next page, 418. As he's sitting there, Savitri is approaching. Savitri is coming back to meet her father. Even as he sang, page 418, and rapture stole through earth time, and caught the heavens, came with a call of hooves, as of a swift heart hastening, Savitri. Savitri arrives just at that moment. A radiant tread glimmered across the floor, a happy wonder in her fathomless gaze. Chained by the halo of her love she came, her eyes rich with a shining mist of joy, as one who comes from a heavenly embassy, discharging the proud mission of her heart, one carrying the sanction of the gods. To her love and its luminous eternity, She stood before her mighty father's throne, and eager for beauty on discovered earth, transformed and new in her heart's miracle light, saw like a rose of marvel, worshipping the fire-tinged sweetness of the Son of Heaven. So Savitri has come and stood before Narad and Ashwapathi and Ashwapathi's wife, and then Narad just looks at her. He flung on her his vast immortal look. His inner gaze surrounded her with its light, and reining back knowledge from his immortal lips, he cried to her. There are 5 or 6 different descriptions of Savitri in the whole book, and each description is different. Now you have a description of Savitri as the bride, not just the bride, as the fulfilled bride, as seen by Narad, and it describes who is this girl, and in describing itself, you can see he knows exactly who she is, but he pretends he doesn't know who she is, and says, "Who is this that comes, the bride, the flame born, and round her illumined head, pouring their lights her hymeneal pomps, move flashing about her," and then describes Savitri's eyes, Savitri's hands. All this, a glorious description of a fulfilled bride. Earlier on, you have a similar description of a different kind when Savitri's father sees her as a full grown-up young woman. Then we have a description of Savitri after Savitri was married to Satyavan. That comes later. Then later on you have a description of Savitri on the day on which Satyavan was to die. So there are 5, 6, 7 different descriptions of Savitri. Each is different. This is a description of Savitri the bride, and if you have appetite for poetry and so on, this must be read and enjoyed because it's a beautiful description. I won't go into any of these things for fear of being, spending all the time here. I now move on to 4.2.3, and then Narad asks her father, on what high mission went her hastening wheels? Last about 7, 8 lines from the bottom. On what high mission went her hastening wheels? Whence came she with this glory in her heart, and paradise made visible in her eyes? What sudden God has met? What face supreme? If you look at her face, there is such glory, such shining luster on her face, as if she met some God in the forest, in the wilderness. Where did she go? Why did she go out? Whom has she met? This is a question Narad asks. And Savitri doesn't want to waste words. On page 424, she is very precise, to the point, and reports as follows. Middle of page 424, Father and King, I have carried out thy will. You have sent me for a specific purpose, and that purpose now has been fulfilled. Father and King, I have carried out thy will. One whom I sought, I found in distant lands. You had asked me to go out and look for my companion for life. I have found him in distant lands. I have obeyed my heart. I have heard its call. And in this, in choosing him, I am entirely guided by my heart. On the borders, now, after saying this, very briefly she says where it is, who it is, and so on. On the borders of a dreaming wilderness, mid Shalva's giant hills and brooding woods, in his thatched hermitage, Dyumatsena dwells. Somebody called Dyumatsena lives in a hermitage. Blind, exiled, outcast, once a mighty king. He was once a mighty king, but now he is blind, exiled, lives in the forest. The son of Dyumatsena, Satyavan, I have met on the wild forest's lonely verge. My father, I have chosen, this is done. Full stop, there is nothing to negotiate, nothing to discuss. She says, this is done. My father, I have chosen, this is done. Now, astonished, all sat silent for a space. Then Ashwapathi looked within and saw a heavy shadow float above the name, chased by a sudden and stupendous light. As soon as the name of Satyavan is mentioned, Ashwapathi, as you know, is a great yogi himself. He looks within and finds that behind Satyavan there is a dark shadow chasing him. That is, there is something evil that is after Satyavan. But then he feels reassured when he says, chased by a sudden and stupendous light. Not only there is a dark shadow, but this dark shadow is also chased again by a stupendous and sudden light. He looked into his daughter's eyes and spoke, says the following, well hast thou done, and I approve thy choice. Okay, you have done well and approve your choice. If this is all, then all is surely well. If there is more, then all can still be well. This is the real believer's attitude. If this is all is well. If there is more, which I don't know, and may have some other aspects which look now threatening, even then all can still be well. Whether it seem good or evil to men's eyes, only for good the secret will can work. If there is a secret will of God behind this world, whatever the outer happenings, whatever our judgment of what is happening on the surface of life, this secret will can only work for good. So, a real believer, astika we call the astika, is either he is somebody who believes that everything is good or is working towards good. Right now you may not see much good happening, but you have the confidence that it is ultimately working towards good because it is backed up by the divine's will. So that's why he says, whether it seem good or evil to men's eyes, only for good the secret will can work. And then he says, our destiny is written in double terms. Our destiny is written in a kind of a double terms. It has one meaning on the surface and a hidden meaning for the soul, for the spirit. And so very often what is good news, what is happy news for our surface life may not necessarily be happy news for the inner life. So everything that happens to us has two meanings at two levels. That's why he says, our destiny is written in double terms. Through nature's contraries we draw nearer God. All these contraries, what is called the dvandva of life, happiness and sorrow, good and evil, all these contraries in nature, gradually through experience draw us towards God. Out of the darkness we still grow to light. Death is our road to immortality. Because immortality is something we cannot achieve in one life. Because immortality means basically growing from the inconscient to the superconscient. And this is a long, long journey. And nobody can hope to do it in one life. And that is why, as I was saying the other day, the concept of reincarnation, the concept of rebirth, is a fundamental aspect of Sri Aurobindo's metaphysics. He believes that everybody is growing through various lives, and the journey is so long from the inconscient to the superconscient that you cannot do it in one life. So if you have to come back again, because you have to come back again, life becomes meaningful. If you didn't have to come back again, and this is the life that you have, as you can see how unfair the life looks on the surface. Some people are born in the Buckingham Palace, some people are born in the slums of Calcutta. Now the chap who is born in the slums of Calcutta, what chance does he have in life? And the chap who is born in Buckingham Palace, of course he can ruin his life, that's a different matter. But he has all the opportunities of life, and therefore naturally you can't compare these two. Now if there is only one life, on what basis does God decide that X must be born in one place and Y must be born in the slums of Calcutta? And what basis is it? Is it tossing of a coin? God decides, let us toss a coin and see where he has to go. So therefore, if there are all kinds of problems of even metaphysics, if you have the notion of a single birth. As I said, even Christians at one time did believe in reincarnation or rebirth. But then around 5th century after Christ, they met, and all these priests met and said, no, this seems to be a very dangerous thing because people might take their life lightly. Oh, if I don't succeed in this life, I again have another life, I have another life. Why? So people are likely to take this, Godward journey very lightly. So let us say to people, you have only one life. So you do or die, it's only one life to you. But it's very unreasonable to expect that we achieve this long journey, fulfill this in one's lifespan. And so it is this journey. And again, if there are lives to come, then you realize that nothing is finished in one life. And ultimately, as you can see, no life is basically a failure. It may be a failure from the world's point of view. That chap has not made much money, he was not able to bring up his children properly, this, that, and the other. But the inner being that was growing in him has benefited from all the experience. And probably because of these experiences, he chastened his inner being, is ready for the next leap. So you can't judge people's lives from the outside. And that's why it says, our destiny is written in double terms. Through nature's contraries we draw nearer God. Out of the darkness we still grow to light. Death is our road to immortality. Death gives us an opportunity to come back again on this earth and restart our adventure. Because here is an adventure, we want to grow towards immortality. But the preparation that is needed to reach immortality is so stupendous that we cannot hope to do all this preparation in one life. And therefore, we need to come back in another life. And if you really look at it, you do not see death anymore as a dark and a terrible thing, a tragedy that waits for us at the end of this life. Now suppose we were destined to live as we are now for 160 years. Let us suppose God has suddenly decided that human beings on earth deserve a better deal. So let us say 160 years. Already by 95 years you can't do many things. You can't eat, somebody has to masticate it and put in your mouth, you just swallow it. You are vegetating, right? You can't do anything, If you go for a trip, the mountain there, the vale there, the sunlight is bright, but you can't drive yourself. There is no energy left. Is that a very good situation to be in? Won't it be wonderful to, as the Gita says, to cast this body as you throw away the old, torn shirt, come back again, full of energy, full of enthusiasm, ready for a new innings? This is the beauty behind death. If you see, death is bad when it comes when you have not had enough time to grow in one life. The Vedas also talked about immortality. When the Veda talks about immortality, it always talked about 100 years. One who lives for 100 years, for them that is immortality. By immortality they didn't mean the same shirt and the same trousers, you go on and on and on. As we wear our shirt is very dear to us. As we wear our particular face is very dear to us. So is everybody's face dear to him. So when we come back again, we will be living our life with the same zest. So in one sense, if you really look at it, you see, this is how one has to reconcile oneself with this God's word. That there is a release. What is wrong about death is that it comes to you when you are unprepared and it swoops on you and just finishes you off. That is bad. But death comes when you may had enough opportunities of growing in one life and your faculties are gradually becoming weaker and weaker and you can't do much, you are just vegetating. That's a wonderful thing to happen. You come back again, as I said, with fresh energy, and again it's a wonderful thing. You come back without any memory of your earlier life. Just imagine coming back to birth in a young body and suddenly realizing that you had a wife in Nadyad or you had a grandson in Karamsad and so on. And you are born here in London. What will you do? Isn't it wonderful, therefore, to be born absolutely with a new slate, no memory at all except the samskaras of your soul, your innate properties of your soul are all made, conditioned by the experience of the earlier birth. So this is what it is, and therefore Sri Aurobindo once again says, in the world of the finite, man's immortality can only be through death. Death in the sense, one life ends and you again come back and you have a tremendous opportunity once again to restart this journey and to go on. So he says, death is our road to immortality. Cry woe, the world's lost voices wail, yet conquers the eternal good at last. Although there are people who always see evil, always see doom, and the world is going to crash, and there is no future, and this is the end of one millennium and the new millennium, and all that kind of thing. But this world is gradually, whether you like it or not, as Sri Aurobindo says, this world is gradually growing towards God. Then might the sage have spoken. At that point, Narad would have said something about Savitri, but Ashwapathi wants to caution Narad, please don't reveal all that you know. In haste broke out and stayed the dangerous word. He says, O singer of the ultimate ecstasy, lend not a dangerous vision to the blind. See, we are all so blind, so ignorant. What is the point in giving us a dangerous vision? Now, we all want to know the future. The most popular man in any company is one who can read your palm. We all want to know the future. And how does it help knowing your future? There is nothing you can change about it, except, by living a life properly and so on. And therefore he says, lend not a dangerous vision to the blind, because by native right thou hast seen clear. Impose not on the mortal's tremulous breast the dire ordeal that foreknowledge brings. Demand not now the Godhead in our acts. Only a God can know and live properly his future. In the Krishna avatar, when Krishna is about to say goodbye to Kunti and Dhritarashtra's wife Gandhari and so on, Gandhari is so enraged with the Lord. She gives him a very bitter curse. He says, just as my family died, all her 100 children were dead, your family also will die. The same fashion. And Krishna smiles. He says, ultimately avatar had to begin, it has to end. So thank you for making it possible for the avatar to end. And he goes back. It's a wonderful story if you really read the Bhagavad and so on. He goes back to Dwarka, and his children, have become so insolent, so mad with power. They have no respect for Krishna. They have no respect for anyone else. They say, one of them says, my father is supposed to be a great hero and a warrior. You know what he's called? He's called Ranchod. He left the battlefield and came away. And he's supposed to be, an exemplar, a good example of morality. He had 16,000 wives in his zenana, and another 8 marriages he did. What kind of... notice what is happening. The sons have lost faith in the father. He says, our father was a cheat, and he was able to hoodwink everybody. And they have become so insolent. These are all children of Krishna and their companions. And one day, the Durvasa and company are coming to meet Krishna. And these youngsters, like gangs, they roam the streets, half drunk, fully drunk, and so on. Nobody to listen, nobody to, advise them. They don't listen to Krishna's advice. This can happen to Krishna. And these people, the gang, are going down the street, and Durvasa and other rishis are coming. They want to play mischief on Durvasa. So one of Krishna's sons is dressed like a woman. And this son of Krishna's, who is dressed like a woman, is taken to Durvasa. And they all pretend great humility and say, Maharshi, you know the future, you can read the future. Can you tell me whether this lady is going to deliver a son or a daughter? He is not even a woman. He is a man. This is the kind of thing to which Yadavs have been reduced, Krishna's own children. And of course, as you know, Durvasa is very angry. He sees through the whole game and says he will deliver a pestle with which you, yeah, all this, and that becomes responsible for the death of all the others. They all hope, all Krishna's wives, Rukmini, Satyavama, all they are hoping that Krishna will do something. He does nothing at all. He waits for 36 years. Come 36 years, he also contributes to the total destruction of all the others. Can we do it? Avatar can do it. He knows. He has no attachment to any of these things. And he himself witnesses the going down of Dwarka into the sea. And then he sends a message to Arjun. It's a very, very, very most touching scene. He says, after I am gone, you have to protect the women of my Janana. There are 16,000 he released when Narakasura was killed. Narakasura had this habit that he would defeat a king and take all his wives and put them in the Janana. So 16,000 prisoners, kings, and their Janana all were there. Krishna defeats him and these women have nowhere to go. So he brings him and they stay with him. And these and Krishna's wives and children, everybody, he sends word to Arjun. When the time has come and Krishna is about to go back, that Arjun should come and protect Dwarka, whoever is left in Dwarka. And finally, when Krishna dies, as you know, he is one afternoon sitting underneath a tree, resting, relaxing, with one foot on another foot and, kind of gradually moving his foot, and some hunter thinks it must be a deer and shoots at this foot of Krishna and the arrow pierces through the foot. In Avatar, couldn't he call a Vaidyanraj and get it? The Avatar is an Avatar, he just waits to die. But before that, he has sent word to Arjun that he should come and protect all these ladies. In the meanwhile, all the Yadavs have killed themselves in a drunken frenzy. Krishna sees all this, Balaram sees all this. They don't raise a finger to do anything about them because they know time has come. And Arjun comes, feels very sad and very sorry that Krishna is no more. But he knows, I am the greatest warrior of this world. And as long as I am alive, I am the protector. Who can harm any one of these women? And so they are all herded together and the march begins from Dwarka to Hastinavati where they were. And they have to cross the Rajasthan deserts. And there, some brigands and thieves and so on, and tribal people whose wives were harassed by Krishna's own kith and kin, they are waiting for an opportunity, and when they come, they all attack them. And Arjun takes up his Gandhi and calls all his astras and so on. Nothing works. What is supposed to be the greatest leader, greatest warrior of this earth? He was the greatest warrior because of Krishna, and Krishna is no more. Arjun is reduced to a cipher. So all our energies and all our powers, everything comes from the Lord. And so the women are just carried away, kidnapped by these tribals, and Arjun can do nothing. And he comes home beaten, humiliated. This is the story, as you can see. An avatar who could protect Arjun from, Arjun had decided that Jayadruth will be killed in 12 hours before sunset tomorrow morning. I will behead Jayadruth because he was responsible of killing Abhimanyu. And Kauravas know this and they give him protection and he is protected so that he can't even see where this Jayadruth is. And if he is not killed before sunset that day, Arjun had said, I will enter the fire and destroy myself. Nowhere. Jayadruth, they had arranged a formation of troops in such a way that Jayadruth couldn't even be seen. Then Krishna had to, daylight saving time or whatever saving time. He sends his, Sudarshan, and that covers the sun, and everybody thinks night has come. And Jayadruth and Kauravas, they're all joyous that the night has come. Jayadruth is not dead, so he raises his head just to see how, fallen Krishna's face, Arjuna's face must be. And he's seen now. And Krishna says, now this is the time, this is the moment, finish him off. Arjun says, how can I do it? The sun has already set. He said, don't bother about the sun, shoot him first. And he shot, and Krishna withdraws his Sudarshan, it is still daylight. The sun has not set. Now, somebody who can do all these things, somebody who can protect, Ashwapathi towards the end, destroys by sending a Brahmastra, even the Pandavas in the womb of Abhimanyu's wife, right? Right? That Krishna can protect. If he wants, he can do anything. And his wives therefore feel that Krishna will protect the Yadavas, but he doesn't raise a finger. He just lets it go. The point is, Avatar has a very, very difficult job to do. If you are asked, would you like to be an avatar, the first thing you should say, no. It's a very difficult moral responsibility. This is what it is. So knowing your future, that's what he said. Impose not on the mortal's tremulous breast the dire ordeal that foreknowledge brings. Demand not now the Godhead in our acts. So please, Narad, do not reveal to us all that you can foresee about Satyavan and Savitri in the future. We will not be able to handle this knowledge. This is a very interesting thing, and this goes on, and this dialogue, conversation, alarms Savitri's mother. What is it my husband and Narada are talking about? They are talking about in a language which is not very clear. It looks to me something is being hidden from us. And so on page 426 she says, O seer, thy bright arrival, page 426, second line, thy bright arrival has been timed to this high moment of a happy life. Then let the speech benign of griefless spheres confirm this blithe conjunction of two stars and sanction joy with their celestial voice. O Narad, in simple words, he says, bless this union of Satyavan and Savitri. You have come to at a most opportune moment. Here, drag not in the peril of our thoughts. Let not our words create the doom they fear. Here is no cause for dread, no chance for grief, to raise her ominous head and stare at love, etc. If wings of evil brood above that house, then also speak, that we may turn aside and rescue our lives from hazard of wayside doom and chance entanglement of an alien feet. So she requests Narad, if you see anything evil, please caution us now, tell us now. It is not too late. If everything is good, of course, we are sure that your blessings will be on Satyavan and Savitri. Then Narad slowly answered to the queen, what help is in prevision to the driven? Human beings are driven. Human beings, there is something called destiny. And we are driven. We are like people who are driving an engine which is already revved up, which is already, in motion. And it is beyond our control. It simply carries us and in the direction it chooses, and says, what help is in prevision to the driven? Safe doors cry opening near, the doomed pass on. A future knowledge is an added pain, a torturing burden and a fruitless light on the enormous scene that fate has built. And so he says, what is the point of going into future? And so it's a beautiful explanation. Finally he says on page 429, 3-4 lines from the bottom, the truth thou hast claimed, I give to thee the truth. This is my opinion. What is my opinion? A marvel of the meeting of earth and heavens is he whom Savitri had chosen mid men. Satyavan is a marvel. He combines within himself the glories of the earth and the glories of the heavens. So he says, a marvel of the meeting earth and heavens is he whom Savitri had chosen mid men. His figure is the front of nature's march. His single being excels the works of time, etc. And goes on, it's a long description of his view of Satyavan, his inner being and so on. And finally on page 431 he says, second line on page 431, his sweetness and his joy attract all hearts to live with his own in a glad tenancy. His strength is like a tower built to reach heaven, or a Godhead quarried from the stones of life. He is a God, in fact, a human God. O loss, If death into its elements of which his gracious envelope was built, shatter this vase before it breathes its sweets. Unfortunately, before the vase begins to spread its fragrance, the vase is going to be shattered. A treasure thus unique, as if earth could not keep too long from heaven, a treasure thus unique loaned by the gods, a being so rare, of so divine a make. But in one brief year, when this bright hour flies back, and perches careless on a branch of time, this sovereign glory ends, heaven lent to earth. This splendor vanishes from the mortal sky. Heaven's greatness came, but was too great to stay. 12 swift-winged months are given to him and her. They have only 12 months together. 12 swift-winged months are given to him and her. This in spite of Ashwapathi's caution, request, please do not reveal any of these things to us. Narad somehow manages to make Ashwapathi's wife ask for it, because he has come precisely for this purpose. He has come precisely for this purpose so he can reveal the future. And he knows Savitri is a kind of person who will not retreat against a situation like this. He has come to steal her will. Her will has become more strengthened. And now you will see that's exactly what happens. This day returning, Satyavan must die. As soon as he says this, a lightning bright and nude, the sentence fell. The lightning fell like a lightning, bright and nude. But the queen cried, Ashwapathi's wife cries out, vain then can be heaven's grace. What is the point of saying Satyavan is this and Satyavan is that, a rare meeting of the heaven and earth and so on? Vain then can be heaven's grace. Heaven mocks us with the brilliance of its gifts. For death is a cupbearer of the wine. It may be the most delectable wine ever thought of, but who is the cupbearer? Death is the cupbearer of this wine. Of too brief joy held up to mortal lips for a passionate moment by the careless gods, but I reject the grace and the mockery. I don't want to know how rare and exceptional being Satyavan is, because this is a mockery. God has tempted Savitri almost into this trap. Therefore he says to Savitri, mounting thy car, go forth, O Savitri. Once again the chariot is still there. Mount thy chariot, go forth once again, Savitri, and travel once more through the peopled lands. Alas, in the green gladness of the woods, thy heart has stooped to a misleading call. Death is the gardener of this wonder tree. Love's sweetness sleeps in his pale marble hand, advancing in a honeyed line but closed. A little joy would buy, too bitter an end. Plead not thy choice, for death has made it vain. Don't say I have chosen and this is done, because this choice of yours has been made vain by death. Thy youth and radiance were not born to lie, a casket void dropped on a careless soil. A choice less rare may call a happier life. I am absolutely sure next time you go and find a young man, he will not be another Satyavan. There is only one Satyavan on earth. I know. But this man who is less glorious than Satyavan will still bring into your life greater happiness, because Satyavan is going to live just for 1 year. And what does Savitri say? Her voice, but Savitri answered from her violent heart. Her voice was calm, her face was fixed like steel. Once my heart chose, and chooses not again. He says, I have chosen once, I can't choose a second time. The word I have spoken can never be erased. It is written in the record book of God. The truth once uttered from the earth's air effaced, by mind forgotten sounds immortally, forever in the memory of time. And it's a beautiful passage. And finally she says, fate's law may change, but not my spirit's will. Fate may have to change its law. In my case, may have to make an exception, but I will not change my will. Fate's law may change, but not my spirit's will. This is a very beautiful conversation. The mother, compassionate, worried about the daughter's future. The daughter, firm, determined. And this goes on for some time. And she also ultimately talks about the worldly ways. What is it you are worried about? In this world, who is the lover and who is the beloved? Don't you know this world is a world of compromise? You can't always get the ideals. Many mothers have said this to their daughters, I'm sure, and keep saying this. This is the drama of this world. Who is the lover and who is the friend? On page 433. Here on this mutable and ignorant earth, who is the lover and who is the friend? All passes here and nothing remains the same. None is for any on this transient globe. He also speaks the most practical words. There is nobody here for anybody. As long as you have something to gain, you are in love, you are faithful, etc., etc. When that is finished, then everything is gone. All passes here, nothing remains the same. None is for any on this transient globe. He whom thou lovest now a stranger came, and into a far strangeness shall depart. You see, it's very interesting. For anything you want, you can quote the Upanishad, the Bible, and the Gita. And says, if I were there and Savitri's mother had asked me to put in a word along these lines, I would have quoted from Valmiki. Valmiki says, human beings who come together, various relationships in the life are like this. Two logs of wood come together in a sea. Each log of wood has come from somewhere you don't know. And somehow at that particular point, these two streams come together, and therefore these two logs of wood come together. And they float together for some time. When once again they will part, nobody knows. So why do you take this as an accidental thing? Why do you put any faith in this? It's also philosophy. That's also philosophy. So ultimately, everything can be philosophized. Laziness can be philosophized. Crookedness can be philosophized. Anything can be philosophized. And so Savitri's mother says all these things to us. He whom thou lovest now, a stranger came, and into a far strangeness shall depart. His moments part once done upon life's stage, which for a time was given him from within, to other scenes he moves and other players. Once your life's purpose is finished, you go away, come back. Next time your parents are different, your brothers are different, your wives are different, your children are different. None of this relationship is a permanent relationship. And to other scenes he moves and other players, and laughs and weeps mid faces new, unknown. The body thou hast loved is cast away amidst the brute unchanging stuff of worlds, to indifferent mighty nature, and becomes crude matter for the joy of others' lives. But for our souls upon the wheel of God, Forever turning they arrive and go, married and sundered in the magic round of the great dancer of the boundless dance. This is a dance of Shiva. Everything, life changes. There is nothing permanent to Savitri. This also is the highest philosophy. Savitri's mother talks about this at this point. It's a beautiful thing. I think you should spend some time looking at it. And finally, Savitri wants to put an end to this. And on page 435, this is what she says to the mother. And if any daughter were to say this to the mother, the mother will then keep her mouth shut. This is what Savitri does. But see how she does this on page 435. Second part of that page. This is first, last joy, and to its throb the riches of 1,000 fortunate years are poverty. See? The greatest joy in life is to be with the man you love, even if it is for a short period. Compared to that, spending 1,000 fortunate years with somebody you don't really care about, you don't really love, to me, this is a greater glory than the other one. So he says, this is first, last joy, and to its throb the riches of 1,000 fortunate years are poverty. Nothing to me are death and grief, or ordinary lives and happy days, and what to me are common souls of men. What to me, he says, common souls of men, ordinary human beings, or eyes and lips that are not Satyavans. She puts together in the same sentence souls and also eyes and lips that are not Satyavans. I have no need to draw back from his arms and the discovered paradise of his love and journey into a still infinity. Only now, for my soul in Satyavan, I treasure the rich occasion of my birth. Yes, until I met Satyavan, I didn't know why I was born. Whether it's a good thing to be born or a bad thing to be born, I didn't know. But once I met Satyavan, I suddenly felt it's glorious to be born and glorious to be alive. He is the meaning of my life. In sunlight and a dream of emerald ways, I shall walk with him like gods in paradise. If for a year, that year is all my life, and yet I know this is not all my fate, only to live and love a while and die. For I know now why my spirit came on earth, and who I am, and who he is, I love. I have looked at him from my immortal self. I have seen God smile at me in Satyavan. When I look at Satyavan's smiling face, I see in front of me God himself. God himself smiling at me. I have seen God smile at me in Satyavan. I have seen the eternal in a human face. If somebody can say this, what can you do? So he says, then none could answer to her words. Silent, they sat and looked into the eyes of fate. They just had to fall silent and quiet. So from Savitri's side, she is unwilling to budge. She is unwilling to change her choice. This is it. I will live with it. And I do not think it is such a calamity. I know Savitri has not yet become the great divine mother that she is. She is still an ordinary human being, at least on the surface. So how does she say, at this point she says this, if for a year that year is all my life, yet I know this is not all my fate, only to live and love a while and die. This knowledge comes to people, this intuition comes to people who have really love in their heart. This is an intuition of love. This is not an intuition of knowledge. She is still an ordinary Savitri. Later on, when she takes up this challenge and then works on herself to bring to the surface all the power she has within herself, then later you will see at one point the Supreme Divine Mother in her comes out, as in Vishwarupa Darshan in the Gita, when the Lord himself shows his universal form. Savitri also shows her real form as that of the Supreme Divine Mother. That comes later, but here now, simply as somebody who has really fallen in love, that love, as I told you, had this effect that it gives you a tremendous intuition about life, and she says, I know. Whatever Narad may say, Narad can't lie, Narad must be telling the truth. And yet I know. How does she know? I know it's conviction of my heart that my life with Satyavan is not meant to be just a glory lasting for 1 year. There is another fate for us. I know that, and I'm convinced of that. This is what she says. Okay, then comes a very, very important canto, the way of fate and the problem of pain. I told you yesterday that Savitri's mother, when she finds that Savitri is unwilling to change and again go back and choose a second time, all this, then she turns to Narad. Because Narad is a commuter between the earth and Vaikuntha. He goes and comes back, and he must have the secrets of the Lord God. And so, on behalf of all humanity, she asks Narad very pertinent questions, very poignant questions, which you and I have always asked and never found any answer to. And the question is, as I said, if God is all kind, all merciful, all omnipotent, and if God created this world, how come he happened to have created such an imperfect world full of pain and evil and death? You know, when an artist produces a painting, artist produces something, the product has something of the vibrations of the artist's consciousness. How is it this world is so bad, so full of suffering and pain? Everybody says life is full of suffering and pain. Right from a communist to somebody who wants to turn to God, everybody says life is full of pain and suffering. How did this come about? How did God create this world? Basically, she's asking, what is it Savitri is being punished for? I can understand there is a law of karma and you have done something wrong, you are punished for and so on, but I don't see anything Savitri has done. Why is she being punished for? Why is there pain in this world? Why is there evil in this world? And in saying this, she minces no words. She puts them very, very strongly. And like the Western philosophers, she's asking, is all this notion of God and soul, is that mere fiction or is there any reality? If there is a God, if there is soul, if all these things are real, why is the world so totally incomprehensible? People who are good, who are honest, their lot seems to be suffering. People who are crooks and who keep cheating the world, they seem to prosper in this world. What is it that's going on in this world? Does God control this world or somebody else? So, she asks this. In other words, as I said, she asks, what is the origin? What is the cause for all this? O seer, on page 437, last 2-3 lines. In the earth's strange twi-natured life, by what pitiless adverse necessity, or what cold freak of a creator's will, by what random accident or governed chance, that shaped rule out of fortuitous steps, made destiny from an hour's emotion came into the unreadable mystery of time, the direr mystery of grief and pain. How did grief and pain come to haunt God's world like this? Is it thy God who made this cruel law? Is it your God who has made this law? or some disastrous power has marred his work and he stands helpless to defend or save? Or should we conclude that there is another power greater than God, and whatever God does, this greater power destroys, and God is helpless, just watches helplessly? Is that what it is? By what random accident or governed chance that shaped a rule out of fortuitous steps, made destiny from an hour's emotion, came into the unreadable mystery of time, the direr mystery of grief and pain? Is it thy God who made this cruel law, or some disastrous power has marred his work, and he stands helpless to defend or save? A fatal seed was sown in life's false start, when evil twinned with good on earthly soil. A disastrous seed was sown on this earth when evil appeared along with good. And this is a long, long description of what human life is. As usual, I won't read the whole thing. I'll read a few lines. On page 439, she describes human life. About the middle of that page, all that we are is like a fort beset. What chance does man have of gaining felicity, of gaining happiness? Man's life is like a fort which is surrounded on all sides by enemy forces. All that we are is like a fort beset. All that we strive to be alters like a dream. In the grey sleep of matter's ignorance, mind suffered lamed by the world's disharmony and the unloveliness of human things. How unlovely human beings can be to one another, we all know this. A treasure misspent or cheaply, fruitlessly sold in the bazaar of a blind destiny. Life seems to be, when you really look at it objectively, what does it look like? A treasure misspent. A treasure wastefully used, treasure misspent, or cheaply, fruitlessly sold. Our transaction seems to be in life. You are giving up everything, what do you get? A few morsels, a few little pieces of happiness here and there. Rest of it is all covered by unhappiness. Happiness is only an occasional episode in an unending tale of unhappiness and misery. That's what the world is. A treasure misspent or cheaply, fruitlessly sold in the bazaar of a blind destiny. A gift of priceless value from time's gods, lost or mislaid in an uncaring world. Life is a marvel mist. Life is a great marvel. It's a wonderful thing. But it's a marvel mist. It doesn't just fructify herself on earth. An art gone awry. You wanted to paint a picture of Ganesha and end up painting the picture of a monkey. That's what life is. We all want to create something beautiful out of our life. But towards the end, what we get is nothing but frustration in some form or another. A gift of priceless value from time's gods, lost or mislaid. In an uncaring world, life is a marvel mist, an art gone awry. A seeker in a dark and obscure place, an alarmed warrior facing dreadful odds, an imperfect worker given a baffling task, an ignorant judge of problems ignorance made. Its heavenward flights reach closed and keyless gates, its glorious outbursts Peter in mind. Great lives, great heroism. What happens? Peter's in mind. Just is blown off. On nature's gifts to man, a curse was laid. All walks enarmed by its own opposites. Error is the comrade of our mortal thought, and falsehood lurks in the deep bosom of truth. sin poisons with its vivid flowers of joy, or leaves a red scar burnt across the soul. Virtue is a grey bondage and a jail. Virtue is a jail. Those who, pursue the moral ideal very often imprison themselves into a kind of mental prison. At every step is laid for us a snare, alien to reason and the spirit's light. Our fount of action from a darkness swells. In ignorance and nescience are our roots. A growing register of calamities is the past's account, the future's book of fate. The centuries pile man's follies and man's crimes. Many people used to say, what does Sri Aurobindo know about human evil? He was living there in Pondicherry, fairly comfortable, away from the human scene. Look at what he's saying. He knows everything. He knows all these things. He knows he knows evil very well. When the world had not awakened to the evil that Hitler was, Sri Aurobindo warned, cautioned. This is the enemy number one. British we can always handle later. Hitler, he will put back the clock of civilization by at least 500 to 1,000 years. We must combine, unite, and put down this monster. All our Congress friends thought, what is it? British are our enemies, and Hitler is the enemy of our enemy. So what does that mean? Hitler must be our friend? Subhash Chandra Bose, they say, went to Hitler and asked for help and said the British have been squeezing us for 2 centuries. And it seems he said, you deserve to be squeezed for another 4 centuries. And in Mein Kampf, his autobiography, he seems to have written, if I ever conquer the world, I will make sure that Asians only become hewers of wood and drawers of water. They will only be good for menial work. All German houses will have ayahs, they will have drivers, and that would have been our lot if Hitler had won. But nobody knew this. Hitler was in the hands of an Asuric power. Sri Aurobindo had seen it. And an ordinary man, a buffoon, became a genius. He was a rabble rouser, the most, as I said the other day, the most educated country in the whole of Europe at that time was Germany. Brainwashed an entire educated people. Made them commit atrocities on the Jews, the atrocities of the kind the world had never seen before. All this happened. There is a book recently that has come out which talks about some research done in the work that Sri Aurobindo did during the Second World War to help the Allies. A lady called Margaret Litchi, she has written this book. How he used to help Hitler, inspire Hitler and so on. He always used to say, my work is not on the physical plane, my work is in the occult plane. When the British forces were being withdrawn at Dunkirk, it was almost the trap. All that the Germans had to do is drop bombs. But that morning there was such a heavy fog and mist, the aeroplanes couldn't see what was happening. A number of things of that kind. And Sri Aurobindo was actually helping. There is a book which Inbai gave me by somebody from Poland. He was imprisoned in the communist world. He was being tortured in the Second World War time. And how in his most excruciating moments when, being tortured day in and day out, he had visitations from Sri Aurobindo. He couldn't recognize who Sri Aurobindo was. He calls him Aurobindogos or something, or Aurindogos. Aurobindogos. He used to come and talk to him, and he appeared like an Indian Brahmin and all that. And there was an American soldier who had left some notes on this, that when he was in the trenches, the mother and Sri Aurobindo both would come to him, encourage him, because they were most despairing moments. So Sri Aurobindo had done a lot of work during the Second World War because he had seen this Hitler had to be pushed down. And Mother has said that in fact it's unexplainable why Hitler, who was going to attack England, changed his tactics and went on behind after Russia. Because England was almost at his mercy. But he said, I will take care of England later. For the present, I will go after Russia, and that proved to be his Waterloo. That's what Hitler was finished. Now all this, there is a lot of literature on this. The point I am trying to make is that very often people believe that Sri Aurobindo talks about a glorious future for man. Oh, this is all utopia. Sri Aurobindo can see this because he doesn't know how evil man is. He knows. He knows precisely what man is capable of doing. And yet, he says, I have seen all the animal nature of human beings, and yet I believe the descent of the supermind is inevitable. It has to happen. That's the confidence. So people shouldn't believe, as the Times of India people, the Times Literary Supplement people said, oh, Sri Aurobindo is soft on evil. He is not soft on evil. He knows exactly what evil does, what role evil plays in this life. He never says, that there is no evil in this world. He says there is evil in this world. And as long as there is evil in this world, we have to work for its removal of this world. Well, as this is, these are all things which show his understanding of these things. In ignorance and nescience are our roots. A growing register of calamities is the past's account, the future's book of fate. The centuries pile man's follies and man's crimes upon the countless crowd of nature's ills, as if the world's stone load was not enough. A crop of miseries obstinately sown by his own hands in the furrows of the gods, the vast increasing tragic harvest reaped from old misdeeds buried by oblivious time. He says, man, he walks by his own choice into hell's trap. The mortal creature is his own worst foe. His science is an artificer of doom. He ransacks earth for means to harm his kind. He slays his happiness and others' good. Nothing has he learned from time and its history. Even as of old in the raw youth of time, when earth ignorant ran on the highways of fate, old forms of evil cling to the world's soul. War making not the sweet smiling calm of life, battle and rapine, ruin and massacre are still the fierce pastimes of man's warring tribes. An idiot hour destroys what centuries made. His wanton rage or frenzied hate lays low the beauty and greatness by his genius wrought, and the mighty output of a nation's toil. All he has achieved, he drags to the precipice. His grandeur he turns to an epic of doom and fall. His littleness crawls content through squalor and mud. He calls heaven's retribution on his head and wallows in his self-made misery. Few lines later, all is an episode in a meaningless tale. This world seems to be an episode in a meaningless tale. Why is it all? And wherefore are we here? If to some being of eternal bliss it is our spirit's destiny to return, or some still impersonal height or endless calm, since that we are and out of that we came, whence rose the strange and sterile interlude, lasting in vain through interminable time? This is a question, he says, if our ultimate aim is to go back to God, to heaven, to Vaikuntha, or whatever it is, because it's where from we came, what is the meaning of this sterile interlude called worldly life? If we have come from God and our destiny is to go back to God, why this worldly life? Why is it so bad? Who will to form or feign a universe in the cold and endless emptiness of space? Or if these beings must be and their brief lives What need had the soul of ignorance and tears? Whence rose the call for sorrow and for pain? Or all came helplessly without a cause? Shall I say that all these things came helplessly, God is helpless, nothing happens here, there is nobody to look after this world? He goes on and concludes finally on page 442, about 5-6 lines from the top. A great illusion then has built the stars. I can only conclude that there is no God, there is no power behind this world. It's just an illusion. What hard, impersonal, a great illusion then has built the stars. But where then is the soul's security? Its poise in this circling of unreal suns. Where is our security? What shall we trust? Whom shall we trust in this world? Or else it's a wanderer from its home, who strayed into a blind alley of time and chance and finds no issue from a meaningless world. Or is it one of those spaceships which went out of control into a blind alley of time and nobody knows how to control it, nobody knows how to work it, nobody knows how to make it return? Are we just lost in space? Is this a spaceship lost in space without any control of any kind? What are we? Or where begins and ends illusion's reign? Perhaps, shall we then say, perhaps the soul we feel is only a dream. That's what Bertrand Russell and other people said when you sit for meditation. Naturally, since you haven't had a good night's rest the previous night, you hallucinate. And this hallucination you call spiritual experience. He says, perhaps the soul we feel is only a dream. Eternal self, what you call eternal self, Atman, a fiction sensed in trance. Must be hallucination, there is nothing else now. This is the indictment. And if you are Narad, you would at least say like me, maybe you have to wait for another 8 days before you get an answer from Narad. And this is the next part, about 20 lines, 25 lines, 25 pages. Narad gives a reply, some kind of a reply to Savitri's questions. It is not a philosophic reply. You want a philosophic reply, then you have to go to the Life Divine, where he talks about the whole issue. Since it's already 12, and we'll take this up, what Narad says in reply. And I come back. We meet now on the 8th of July at 7:30. 8th of July is a Tuesday, I think. Until then, have a sunny July. It's coming up.